Hi everyone, Dr. Vernita White, the Brilliant Life Strategist and Consultant here, and I'm back for another video. And if you notice my background, I am on location. So I'm not in my traditional space. So I'm sitting outside. I don't have my microphone, so I have my old school headset in. So hopefully you can hear me and see me. You may notice that the sun goes in and out because I'm trying to make sure I stay in the light, but not get burned by the sun. All right, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining me. And I'm in this video, I'm going to talk about something very quickly. I haven't talked about this much. If you scroll back to some of my old videos, you'll see I kind of started this pathway and then I completely jumped ship and went to the personal development space, which I still love that space, but then I still feel the heart tug of working with training and development. And I think of the broader perspective or the broader picture of like teaching and educating and leading, even though that's my background. I see it as training and development because every industry has a training and development component to where they're training people how to do the job, but then also developing them as leaders, whether that's leaders on the team, managers, leaders of the department, or even the leaders of the company. And once I started opening up my perspective that way, I was like, okay, what I've been learning all of my years in the traditional education space, whether that's K-12 or in higher education, I can contribute to some things that are happening. So a little backstory, because people really don't know this part. And it does tie into still calling myself the Brilliant Life Strategist, because like I said in the previous video, regardless of your profession or business, you will only go so far. Like your trajectory in your career or your business will only go as far as your personal development. So you need both. You need to constantly sharpen your skills in whatever area, whether that's your natural born talent or a talent that you've learned or acquired. And then you also need to sharpen up your skills in your personal space, in your self-development and your beliefs and all of that. So back when I was getting my doctorate degree, my dissertation was about helping leaders give strategic and meaningful feedback, mainly in the STEM area, mathematics, like detailed down in mathematics, but I broadened it out to the STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And it's a buzzword in K-12. I think people don't use it correctly, but hey, whatever. But the dissertation at the time was looking at these popular observation tools that are out that the school districts adopted and showing how that they're flawed in the way that the leaders use them to assess classroom teachers and to provide them feedback. And it was so general. Now, the two large assessment companies have made millions of dollars off of this. I'm not saying that they were wrong, because I do believe in having some structure or framework to see how you are evaluating performance, right? So I don't see anything wrong with that, but it's just the way that it was used. And after my research, I realized that the creators of both documents, they even said how school districts were using them were not correct. But they were like, well, if that's what y'all want to do, we're not going to turn down this money. And what I said was, they're good for a surface level, but not for evaluating teachers, telling them that they can't do a good job. Like you're going into a mathematics classroom, but none of your feedback has anything to do with mathematics. You're going into an English language arts class, or you're going into an elective, a foreign language class, and you're trying to evaluate what that teacher is doing, saying how those students are interacting, but nothing, you're not asking any questions related directly to that content. So as I was doing this study, I realized that there was also some belief systems attached to the way administrators were supervising teachers. In my study, I had assistant principals, I had district specialists, and I even had superintendents and deputy superintendents. So I had a wide range of participants. Now my group was small, but the range of like their experiences and their levels were enough for me to say, So it was one thing if I said, oh, this only happened for principals, but it wasn't. It was across the spectrum. And I noticed that there were some belief systems attached to that. Now, back then, before I really got into personal development, I knew belief systems as limiting beliefs. Like you had limiting beliefs about your attitude towards mathematics, or as a leader, you believed and perceived that schools should run in this particular way based on the beliefs and your values and things like that. And then I realized, like, you know what? You also need to up level the way you're trained as far as having content conversations, meaning that I used to think going in, you need to know the area that you're observing. Like if you were going to be the supervisor or principal of instruction or whatever over a mathematics department, you needed to know mathematics, right? But then I was studying, I was like, well, that's not really the case, because that's not the job of the administrator. That's not your job. But I do believe you need to have enough language to be able to draw out questions of the person that you're observing to make them dig deeper into their craft. Because if we're sticking with the K-12 system, then the content expert is the teacher, right? Like you did all the training for that. As the principal, one, you should know some knowledge because you did go to school. So it's in there somewhere, dig it up. But having something, a tool, which I created to give you the language of whatever class you're observing, because overall it doesn't change, but knowing the specific things to say to a person, especially a specialized person, then that makes all the sense, because you don't have time as the visionary of the school to go take all the science classes, go take all the history classes or whatever. And then the other key part to that, what made my study different, is I wanted to know what was going on in your head in the moment. So I did a process called a think aloud, because what happens, and I got this from the medical profession, because my dissertation, I won't get too deep, it's somewhere on my channel that you can find it, that I talk about it. But I combined a lot of professional areas, medical, psychology, business leadership, into my dissertation to create a conceptual framework. And the way that medical people are trained as they're going through their studies, and even the surgeons a lot of times still do this, they talk aloud, they think aloud during their process. They don't stay in their head. And so as it related to feedback, I noticed that what you're thinking in your head, something happens between your head and your hand to what you're writing down on the paper. So you may have all of these things that you want to say about what you see in the classroom, but you're writing, and the form that you're using just kind of limits or box you into your thinking. In the medical profession, the reason why they do this is because the people who are watching and observing them, they can see their real thought process in real time, because something would get lost in translation if the surgeon went and just did like, this was step 1, this was step 2, this is step 3. And while the process technically could be linear, it's the secret sauce is in seeing how the surgeon got to each step. Same thing with leadership and feedback. I'm telling you, this is where you need to improve, or this is what I noticed in your classroom, but this is the thought process that led me to that. I think that is so much richer. And so what I did was I literally had them watch videos and say things out loud as the classroom was happening. And then I had them to just observe another video without saying anything. And the two things were totally different. So fast forward, that led me to doing some consulting work. I already told you previously in some videos where I went into the personal development space, because I noticed things that were happening with my students, and content was not the forefront at that moment. We had to work on like who you are as a person at your core. And then when I started doing consulting work for this large university and this other large school district, I noticed there was the intersection where these people wanted to improve their leadership style. But then as we were doing the work, they realized, oh, I need to look within myself, because we were doing a diversity training. So I tied in diversity and then understanding STEM education. So I said all that to say this led me to this framework, another one. So in the previous video, I talked about my framework for embracing grit and understanding what that means for brilliance. I call it the Embracing Brilliance framework. Well, in this one, I haven't really settled on the name. I think I did. I call it the 5C model to lead for ultimate impact and influence. I think I'm gonna stick with that one, but it's 5 C's that I think are important, and this can translate into corporate space as well. So, and that's why I broaden it up to training and development, because that's not only limited to schools. Companies also have a training and development space. And I believe these are important and relevant if you're going to be someone that's leading or teaching people, right? Or serving them. So the first part is the core. So the first C is core. And I said, well, that one is who you are at your core, who you be. And during the training I did before, there were like some grown men in there, like 40 plus, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever taken time to really look at who I am as a man or what my core values were. And we like to talk about core values, but have you really sat down and went through like what are at least 3 to 5 core things that where you make all your decisions through that lens? And that's one way I like to look at core values, and not core values that you had to adopt or someone told you to have, but really with all your life experiences and who you are at this moment, what are your core values? And the reason why that's important, especially in any work environment, I brought this up at the training, is do your core values align with the company core values or the school core values? And sometimes you bypass all this, like I just want to get a job, but it really matters. And I had people at this training, they were like, oh my gosh, because I pulled up their institution core values and then I had them to match it to their or compare it to their core values. And a lot of them were like, wow, I probably wouldn't be working here if I knew that. Now, I'm not saying if your core values don't align, quit the job. Definitely not saying that. But if you're feeling like, why am I here? Or we don't, if something's off, that could be a good indicator of where to start. So core values, because who you are at your core is going to come out in your leadership, it's going to come out in your observations, it's going to come out in your teaching, it's going to come out somewhere. And I want to go back to being more so on the leadership side and the manager side, is because that's your lens, and you're constantly in a space where you have to evaluate, observe, and it could feel like you're judging people. So understanding your core values with that lens and how you interact with people is very important. And that goes into the unconscious biases, the conscious biases, the microaggressions, that all of this is centered around that. So that was core. The second one is content. And when we think about content, like in schools, it's like all the subjects that you had to take. You know, when I talk about know your content or teach your content, knowledge is understanding the mathematics, the science that you're teaching. If you're in corporate, understanding the sales or the human resource department or the technology part, whatever your skill set is, I see that as content. A lot of times I've noticed that sometimes we just know things, but then we get complacent on sharpening our skills. So then it's like, well, what are really the necessary skills you need to have to produce? There's a lot of discussion about what should be taught in schools. I agree, now that the world is changing, and it's like we've been having the same subject areas. There's been a lot of variation, but those core have been the same probably since the beginning of public education. But then when you see companies, they are constantly on, well, a lot of them in the grand scheme of things, constantly on like, okay, this new thing just came out. We got to send the team for them to learn. This new product just came out. We got to send the team to learn. A new strategy is happening in the industry. We got to send the team to learn. So content, are you sharpening your skills? Because you can be super smart, but even Elon Musk, I'm sure, is like, how can I go back and sharpen what I need to sharpen to run Tesla and SpaceX and all of that? So the content. So that's the second C. The third C is curriculum. And how I look at this as curriculum, we know this in school, like all the classes you have to take, in college, all the classes you have to take. But in corporate, it's like, okay, all of the trainings, but what is the lens that I'm learning all of this? How does it relate to the bigger picture of the company? Yes, I'm learning, I got my skill set, but what else am I learning to make sure that I'm a whole individual, a whole person in the workspace? Yes, I may have to go to a sales training, but do I also need to go to like a diversity training to make sure that I'm doing right on my sales calls? Or do I need to learn more about mental health? And not saying that it's not like therapy or whatever, but understanding the toll that it takes. And maybe you're seeing why you're frustrated in sales and things like that. So looking at everything that ties together to make you the most productive person. Like I said, in schools, it's like, okay, we tell the students to take all these classes, but is it really to their benefit to make them better, productive people when they exit? Same thing with your job. And some people are like, well, if we invest so much in this person and they leave, then what? And it's like, well, what if you invest so much in them and they stay? Look how much better your company or your organization will grow. So looking at is like, are the things that I'm offering my team, is it beneficial for them as a whole? And will it make them more productive in the long run? The next one is communication. And I look at this two ways. Yes, communication, especially as a trainer or leader. How are you connecting with your audience? How are you displaying the knowledge or imparting the knowledge, making sure that they understand? How are you making the content relevant to them in this moment? Are you checking the room? What do your really creating a learning experience? Are you in charge of the atmosphere, the learning experience, to make sure that it's not a sit and get, to make sure that they are really soaking in the information at a deeper level? That's one way to communicate, that I see communication, especially for leading for ultimate impact and influence. Communication is key. The second part that a lot of I haven't seen so much, like it felt like it was only for a select few, but it really shouldn't be, is how are you getting your message out there in terms of communication? So for example, if you're a leader of an organization, let's use principals. I'll just stick with that one. And then let's say you're in corporate, right? Every industry has an association and conferences and journals or outlets. Are you putting yourself in a position to put your thoughts out there, to be a thought leader, to write for your associations, to write articles, to do videos, to do outside trainings and things like that, because you have a different perspective? I think that is also necessary, because one, it sharpens you, but then it's like you're able to, if someone didn't, let's say at this company, they're like, we just can't get our people to get on board with this, but you do an amazing job in that area. Then if you already have resources available, why not? Here's another example, like a smaller example. When I was teaching mathematics to sixth graders, I hated teaching measurement. I can do measurement, but to teach it for a student to get it, now I pride myself on making sure people understand everything I teach them. And they could, but it was just a struggle for me. But there was another teacher who was like, knew all the ways to get the students to understand measurement. I would go and say, look, what do you have? Because they had already put things out there. I'm going to take what you have and use it in my class. Why keep racking my brain? But if that person had never done that, I would either had to continue to rack my brain, or YouTube wasn't big at the time. But so I would be on the internet, just like looking for other resources, burning my time when they had already communicated their value and put it out there in a way that was more useful for others. I think if more leaders do that, you will have more influence and impact. And then it helps you, because then you don't see yourself as just this one-dimensional person, or even two-dimensional. It's broaden your perspective and your confidence level as a leader. And then the last one is connection. Again, that's two ways. One, how are we connecting our core content, curriculum, and communication? How are we connecting all of that to the bigger vision and mission of this school or this organization? The other way is relationship building. How are we relating to all of the people that we're interacting with? And you get to define that relationship how you want to. There are some people who come together as an organization and they decide, and then there are some, as a leader, this is what it's going to be, but this is how we're building relationships. I think that is very important because the people make the world go round. Human interactions, I don't care how much artificial intelligence and things come around, people will always make the world go round. And you'll be surprised at what people will do for you if you have a relationship with them. And I had to learn this, and a relationship with people doesn't always mean we're going out for happy hour, or I got to come over to your house for the holidays, or you have to be all in my business or anything like that. Connection could be simply as asking about someone's cat, or you heard them say something and you brought it up. You noticed that they were some things that they're out of, and you just like give them little trinkets, or just in conversation, saying a hello. You wouldn't believe how many times people are like, "Oh my gosh, um, I think you're so cool. We're friends." Especially when I was leading my team of mathematics teachers, like, "Oh my gosh, you care about us and blah 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 blah." And I was like, "I do," but it was the notes that I would leave on the door, or going to check up on them, saying hi, remembering something that they said, helping them see a different way of teaching the mathematics, just like little things like that. We never hung out outside of the school. We didn't talk on the phone. I wasn't on social media then, but there was no connection there. But they felt like we were in like a relationship. They had a connection with me, and I didn't know it back then. But looking back, and people used to compliment my whole department, and was like, wow, this is like one of the best departments as a group we've seen in the district. And now I'm looking back, that's related to all of those. And before I even knew a name to them, I knew what I wanted with the team, and to make sure that it did align with the school and the district, because I truly believe, I think at the time our mission was, honestly, I forgot it, but it was something everybody achieved, I don't know, something like that. I truly believe that at my core and at my center. As far as the content, I made sure like, hey, you are a geometry teacher. I need you to go watch some videos, sharpen up your skills. You got to put in some work. Especially back then, well, still now, people weren't majoring in, like I majored, I have a degree in mathematics. So I embodied all of the mathematics. Like I knew it, right? But everybody wasn't like that. But I was like, hey, you may not know it like I know, but I need you to know this section. So content, really sharpening your skill sets was important to me. And then curriculum, I was like, look, we teach a whole different set of students. We got to look beyond just this mathematics. Now, I would tell them that, but I could tell the difference when I went to college to teach college. I had to refocus that, because I was like, y'all need to only know the content. So it's interesting how your thoughts like evolve and things like that. But when I was leading, I was like, hey, I need you to see what else is happening in the child's lives, to why they're not caring about this content. So what else can you bring into your curriculum to teach them or show them, so they can see a bigger picture? And then as far as communication, tighten up your presentations in the classroom. How are you talking? Are you moving around? Are you your proximity control? Are you watching all of the students? Your voice, your tone, like all of that was communication. And then for some of them, I was like, you do great in the classroom. Are you applying to speak at this conference? Are you applying to write this article and things like that? And then I just ended with the connection is, as a team, I had their backs and I stood up for them when people would come in and say, oh, the scores are low. And I was like, don't nobody talk to my people. Y'all talk to me, right? And I built that bond with them. Again, this wasn't about us hanging out at lunch all the time or doing things outside of work. But when we were like I don't want to say like, it was kind of like a family, but it's one of those like mutual respect kind of things. And it was a group. You don't come, look, we had an understanding. They understood the assignment. Like, okay, not everybody, but as a collective, yeah. So I think that's important. So I had 5 C's for embracing grit. That's really on the personal side. And then I have my 5 C's as the professional side to lead for ultimate impact and influence. And a leader is defined as not just only by roles and titles alone. We lead in different areas of our lives. And I believe that if you take that what I said, and that could be a part of life. So let me show you how that looks. Core values are core values. That doesn't change personally or professionally. When it's time for content, one, I told you, is the skill set that you do for your corporate place, but in your personal life, It's like, what are you doing to improve yourself as a person in your health and wellness, in your finances, in your spirituality, in your relationships, in your creativity, in your community? What do you need to learn to up level that? Now, the curriculum, I love this, and I had this epiphany the other day. The curriculum, and I like the 12 areas of life. If you never heard of it, look it up. I learned it from Mind Valley, the 12 areas of life. But just I see that as a life curriculum, like everything ties together. So there are different content areas, but how they all tie in together, I think that is beautiful. And that's how you have a beautiful life. Just think about school, when all, like, individually you took classes and things like that, but the curriculum that all came together was like, this is your body of knowledge. This is how you got the degree. So think about your real life that way. And again, it goes back to corporate, like, what is your training and development program curriculum? So I just want you to see how all of this is transferable. As far as communication, that goes both ways. How are you communicating in your personal life with people, family, friends, associates, strangers? And then, like, what are you doing to, everyone is born with a unique gift and a unique voice. What are you doing to make sure that is being shared with others? Airplane again. What are you doing to make sure that is being shared with others? So everyone doesn't have to go, y'all see this, excuse that. Everyone doesn't have to be on stages or platforms or anything like that. Everyone doesn't have to go write articles or write books. But I do believe that everyone, especially in the leadership role, needs to share in some way, somehow. You know, you have insights and thoughts, whether if it's just a Facebook Live, where it's just an Instagram post. You pretty much share anyway in your life. Every time you share a picture of a dog, cat, your snow day, or out at the beach or whatever, you are sharing, but what else can you add to that, you know, to pour value into people? And then connection. Are you connecting with people, and not just in the social space, but really connecting with them at the core and building relationships and making sure that it's a win-win on both sides, which is very possible. So I hope that made sense for you. I would love for you to share your comments down below. This is a training that I am working with to go to corporate places, because I mean, that's the overall framework. But then I also have, especially the observation piece that whole story I told you all about. The 5 C's came from that, but the framework of seeing how those 5 C's show up into evaluations and observations of employees, that's very important, because there is a framework and a way and some documents and things to help you do that. But I think understanding the overall framework for yourself as a whole will help you show up to be a better leader. And then we can get down to, all right, how are you observing these people and giving them feedback, right? All right, so I hope that makes sense. I think it makes sense, but I can only know if you give me feedback and ask me questions. That's what I used to tell my students, like, I can be up here teaching and talking, but when I pause and ask you a question, if you don't say anything, now I'm not going to assume that you know, because I can see it all over your face, but I need you to ask me something so that I can make sure that I can know where I need to take a deeper dive or pull back some. I can't see your face, so I need you to comment down below and reach out to me to let me know whatever you want to learn more about. And I'll be happy to share and see. And if it's something deeper or extended, have a working relationship, I would love to do that as well. All right, so thank you so much for listening and learning with me. I am Dr. V, and I want you to remember to be well, be empowered, be bold, and be brilliant. Until next time, bye.